Hello everyone! Today we step into one of the most baffling and chilling mysteries ever told. A tale that has echoed across decades and across countries, whispered by travelers, repeated in strange case files, and retold as both folklore and frightening possibility. It is the story known as the Vanishing Hotel Room mystery. Imagine arriving in a foreign city, tired from your travels, checking into a grand hotel, and settling into your room. Everything seems ordinary at first. The furniture, the lamps, the bed, even the scent of polished wood and faint perfume in the halls. But then, in the space of only a few hours, your reality collapses. You return to the place you thought you knew, only to find it gone, not just changed, but erased, as if it never existed. This mystery has haunted countless storytellers because it blurs the line between legend and truth. Some say it is a tale of government secrecy. Others claim it hides a paranormal phenomenon, and still others believe it is the chilling evidence of something far stranger, a crack in time itself. But how did this story first appear? And what makes it so terrifying? Today, we are going to peel back the layers, trace the origins, follow the witnesses, and explore every dark corridor of this unsettling case. The most well-known version of the story begins in Paris, France, in the late 19th century. A young woman named Gabrielle and her mother arrived in the city, their journey long and exhausting. They checked into a luxurious hotel and were given a room that seemed perfectly ordinary. Gabrielle's mother, however, began to feel ill. The young woman was sent out to fetch medicine. When she returned only hours later, something unexplainable had happened. The room was gone, not only gone, but as she searched the hotel, no one seemed to remember her mother. The staff looked at her as though she were mad. The number of the room no longer existed. Even the design of the corridor seemed different. Every trace of her mother had vanished into thin air. At first, Gabrielle screamed, begged, and demanded answers. She ran to the desk clerk, only to be met with cold stares. When she insisted on the truth, she was escorted out of the hotel. Desperate and lost, she searched Paris endlessly, but she never saw her mother again. To this day, the fate of her mother remains unknown. Was she abducted? Was there a cover-up? Or did Gabrielle simply step into a rift between realities? What makes this story so unsettling is how it reappears in different times and different places. Similar accounts have surfaced in London, New York, Shanghai, and even in smaller towns. Travelers report checking into rooms that later vanish from the records of the hotel. In some versions, entire floors have been reported missing. Guests claim they've ridden an elevator to a floor that seems perfectly normal at first, only to find later that the same floor does not exist in blueprints or staff knowledge. Skeptics argue these are tales of memory distortion, hallucinations, or simple urban legends meant to scare tourists. But if this was only one tale, perhaps it could be dismissed. The chilling part is that dozens of variations have been recorded, and in many cases, the people who reported them were not storytellers, but respectable travelers, journalists, or officials. Now, let's pause for a moment and picture yourself in Gabrielle's shoes. You leave your mother resting for what feels like a short errand. The hotel is alive, filled with the bustle of staff, voices in the halls, the sound of luggage wheels against tile. You buy medicine, return, and suddenly the familiar corridor is wrong. The carpet pattern doesn't match. The light fixtures are different. The number on the door is gone. And when you ask the staff, they claim no such room ever existed. Would you trust your own memory, or would you start to doubt your sanity? This question is at the heart of the Vanishing Hotel Room mystery. It forces us to confront how fragile our trust in reality truly is. We walk through life believing the world is fixed and solid. But what if it is not? What if it is shifting, with moments when a door leads not where it should, but somewhere else? Some researchers who have studied these stories suggest there are three possible explanations. The first is the idea of a cover-up. In Gabrielle's case, historians point out that her mother's sudden illness might have been linked to a deadly disease, such as the plague or cholera, which governments at the time would have been desperate to hide to protect tourism and trade. If Gabrielle's mother had died suddenly, the hotel and local officials might have conspired to erase the evidence. isolating Gabrielle until she could be removed from the scene. This would explain why the staff acted coldly and why records of the room seemed altered. But could such a conspiracy truly erase every trace, even a hotel room? The second explanation is psychological distortion. Perhaps Gabrielle suffered a mental break brought on by exhaustion, culture shock, or trauma. In such a case, her memory of the room could have been fabricated, her conviction in her mother's presence an illusion. But this theory stumbles when we realize that similar cases have been reported by people with no history of mental illness, and sometimes by more than one witness at the same time. The third explanation is the most chilling: a time slip. Could it be that certain locations, like old hotels, are points where time does not flow as we think? Maybe Gabrielle stepped back into a version of Paris where her mother did not exist. Or perhaps she herself briefly crossed into a parallel reality where the room had never been built. If so, her mother might still be alive but trapped on the other side, forever unreachable. These three theories cover up, psychological break, and time slip each leave unanswered questions, and that is what makes this mystery so enduring. As we move further into the story, let's explore how this legend spread. After the Paris case, newspapers and magazines across Europe picked up variations. By the early 20th century, American mystery journals carried reports of disappearing hotel guests. One striking account came from London, where a businessman claimed that after an evening out, he returned to his hotel only to find that the entire floor he had been staying on no longer existed. The staff looked at him with confusion when he asked about his luggage, as though he were mad. Another tale emerged from Shanghai in the 1930s. A woman claimed she and her husband checked into a hotel near the Bund. After a day of exploring the city, they returned, but the staff insisted they had never checked in. Their names were not in the records. Even their passports had mysteriously disappeared from the front desk safe. Stranded in a foreign city, they never recovered their belongings, and the hotel denied everything. What gives these stories power is not only their repetition, but the sense of helplessness they inspire. To lose a room is to lose a safe space. To have your memory questioned is to lose your identity. And when strangers deny the truth you know, reality itself begins to fracture. As we continue, let us consider the psychological terror of this mystery. Imagine being alone in a foreign land, every face unfamiliar, every word heavy with accents you don't fully understand. You cling to the certainty of your hotel, your room, your family waiting for you, and then, in a single moment, that certainty is stolen. You are left standing in a corridor that no longer matches your memory. A door that should lead to safety is gone. People who should help you look at you like you are insane. That is the horror of the Vanishing Hotel Room mystery. We return now to the figure of Gabrielle, whose story is the foundation of this mystery. Some historians have tried to trace whether Gabrielle herself ever existed. Old Parisian records mention travelers with similar names, but nothing conclusive has ever been proven. Some researchers argue that her tale may have first appeared in print as a cautionary story for young women traveling abroad without proper chaperones. Yet if that were the case, why did it evolve into so many independent reports across different continents? Stories usually twist and change, but the essence here remains chillingly consistent. A room, a disappearance, and denial by the staff. This consistency is important. When multiple versions of a legend share the same core elements across time and distance, folklorists suspect one of two things. Either the story carries a symbolic weight so powerful that it naturally repeats, or, more disturbingly, it may have roots in real events that left scattered witnesses and fragments of truth. The Vanishing Hotel Room mystery seems to live at the intersection of both. Let us now step into the mind of Gabrielle on that fateful night. Imagine her standing in the lobby, clutching a small paper bag with medicine. Her heart is pounding. She rushes to the desk clerk, but the man frowns and shakes his head. He insists she arrived alone. When she cries out that her mother is ill upstairs, he replies there is no record of her. She demands to see the manager. The manager arrives grave and polite, but equally firm. There is no such guest, no such room. Her voice rises, echoing through the marble halls. Other guests glance at her nervously, as if she is an intruder disrupting their peace. She is not only losing her mother, but her grip on reality in the eyes of strangers. In some retellings, Gabrielle is even taken aside by a sympathetic maid who whispers that she should leave before she makes trouble for herself. The implication is sinister. Someone wants her silence. But silence about what? An outbreak of disease hidden from the public? A high-profile guest who needed secrecy? Or something beyond human explanation? The disease theory, though mundane compared to time travel, still carries a dark plausibility. In the 19th century, Europe suffered outbreaks of cholera, plague, and typhoid. Cities desperate to maintain their reputations for tourism often went to extraordinary lengths to hide such cases. If Gabrielle's mother had shown symptoms, the authorities might have acted swiftly to remove her, sterilize the room, and erase all trace before panic spread. But even if we accept this, it does not explain the countless later stories of vanishing rooms in modern hotels, long after such medical cover-ups would have been possible. Take, for example, the account from the 1950s in New York City. A traveling salesman claimed that he stayed in a midtown hotel where he left his suitcase and jacket. After dinner, he returned only to be told no such reservation existed. When he insisted, police were called and he was escorted out. Later, when he contacted the hotel's management by phone, they admitted he had a reservation, but his room was listed as unoccupied. When he returned in person the following morning, his suitcase was gone, and staff swore he had never checked in. His name appeared on no records. He had lost not just belongings but proof of his own presence. Another disturbing element in these stories is the behavior of hotel staff. In nearly every version, they are described as calm, detached, even cold. They deny with a firmness that borders on rehearsed. This uniformity has led some to believe there is a long-standing network of secrecy among certain hotels. But secrecy about what? Could there be places in the world where reality itself is unstable, and the staff, for reasons unknown, are trained to cover it up? To explore this, we must turn to the theory of liminal spaces. Paranormal researchers suggest that certain locations act as thresholds, places where time and reality weaken. Hotels, with their constant flow of strangers, layered histories, and anonymous rooms, might be especially prone to this. A room could vanish not because it is hidden, but because it is literally shifted out of sync with our world. To those inside, time might stop, or they might cross into another dimension altogether. To those outside, the room simply ceases to exist. This brings us to one of the most frightening possibilities, that Gabrielle's mother never died, nor was she hidden, but that she slipped into another reality. Somewhere in a parallel Paris, she may have awakened to find her daughter gone, her room intact, and the staff insisting that Gabrielle had never existed. Two lives torn apart, trapped in mismatched worlds. Such a thought is haunting because it introduces a terrifying symmetry. Perhaps in every vanishing room case, someone is left behind in confusion, while someone else lives on in a slightly altered world. Reality forks like a river, and we, the travelers, are swept down different streams, never to meet again. Yet the skeptics are not satisfied. They argue that these stories are too perfect, too dramatic, designed to unsettle but lacking hard evidence. No newspapers of the time confirm Gabrielle's disappearance. No police reports remain from the London businessman. The New York salesman's tale came from a friend of a friend, never directly verified. Could it be that the vanishing hotel room is simply an archetypal story, a cultural ghost born of travel anxiety? Consider what hotels represent. For most people, a hotel is a temporary refuge in a strange land. You arrive exhausted, surrounded by foreign languages, uncertain of your safety. Your room is your only anchor, the place where you can close the door and feel at peace. To imagine losing it is to imagine losing your only sanctuary. Perhaps the vanishing hotel room mystery exists because it speaks directly to that primal fear. The fear of being lost in a strange place, utterly alone. But there is more. What unsettles us is not just the loss of a room, but the denial of witnesses. When others insist that what we know to be true has never existed, our identity fractures. This is called gaslighting in psychological terms, the manipulation of someone into doubting their own memory or sanity. The Vanishing Hotel Room stories are the ultimate gaslight, enacted not by one manipulator, but by an entire hotel of strangers. And yet, the mystery persists. Writers, historians, and paranormal investigators continue to collect reports. The tale of Gabrielle and her mother was adapted into novels, short stories, and even films, each time rekindling public interest. Its staying power suggests something deeper that maybe, just maybe, the boundary between legend and reality is thinner than we believe. The story of the Vanishing Hotel Room does not end with Gabrielle in Paris. It spreads outward like ripples in a pond, reaching across continents and centuries, leaving a trail of whispers, unanswered questions, and chilling possibilities. In Part 1, we followed the origins of this strange tale, from the desperate young woman searching for her lost mother to the unsettling behavior of hotel staff, and the disturbing theories of disease cover-ups, psychological fractures, and even time slips. Now we turn our gaze to the modern world, to examine whether such mysteries continue today, and what they reveal about the fragile boundaries of reality. In the mid-20th century, the age of air travel brought with it new versions of the mystery. Businessmen and tourists crossing oceans began to tell of strange encounters in hotels from Hong Kong to San Francisco. One of the most chilling comes from a man named Arthur, a British civil servant stationed in India during the 1940s. Arthur claimed he had checked into a colonial hotel, leaving his belongings in his room before going for a walk through the bustling streets. When he returned, the hotel manager insisted that he had never been a guest. Not only that, but the room he claimed to have stayed in did not exist on any floor. Arthur protested furiously, but eventually he was thrown out into the hot, crowded streets with no luggage and no evidence he had ever been there. Years later, when he returned to India as a private traveler, he tried to find the same hotel. The building was still there, but it had been remodeled. The room he remembered, with its pale shutters and carved bed frame, was nowhere to be found. Another version comes from Tokyo in the 1970s. A married couple claimed they had spent a night in a charming but old-fashioned hotel near Shinjuku. The staff were kind, the room smelled faintly of tatami mats and incense, and everything seemed ordinary. But when they returned from sightseeing the next day, the hotel had vanished. In its place was a vacant lot surrounded by fencing. Neighbors insisted that no such hotel had stood there in decades. When the couple produced a receipt from the front desk, written in careful Japanese calligraphy, it was examined by police but declared a forgery. The couple never understood how they had slept in a building that no longer existed. The Tokyo account brings us closer to the possibility of what researchers call phantom architecture. Some theorists argue that just as people report seeing ghostly apparitions, entire buildings might occasionally appear and disappear. Perhaps Gabrielle's hotel room was not erased, but instead existed in that space only temporarily, fading like a phantom. Could it be that hotels, with their transient nature, sometimes blur into other realities, leaving us stranded when they vanish again? But before we dive too deeply into the paranormal, let us consider another angle, the possibility of deliberate deception. Hotels, after all, are businesses. They deal with travelers who are often tired, confused, or unfamiliar with local customs. It would not be impossible for unscrupulous staff to manipulate or even rob vulnerable guests. In fact, some investigators have suggested that the Vanishing Hotel Room stories may mask organized crime. A guest could be drugged, their belongings stolen, and then the staff could deny they had ever been there. Without receipts or records, the victim would have little chance of proving otherwise. In this light, Gabrielle's story may have been less about time slips and more about cold human greed. But again, this does not explain the eerie consistency across time and geography. The Vanishing Hotel Room mystery has also attracted the attention of psychologists who see it as a study in the unreliability of human memory. They argue that when people travel, Especially in stressful conditions, their minds are more prone to confusion. A guest might misremember the floor they were on, mistake one hallway for another, or confuse the names of hotels. In their panic, the brain fills in details that never existed. Yet the counter-argument remains: how can different people from different eras tell such strikingly similar stories? We must return, then, to the most unsettling explanation, that these stories may indeed represent breaches in reality. Physicists have long debated the possibility of parallel universes, worlds layered alongside our own, invisible until something causes them to overlap. If such rifts exist, hotels might be prime locations for them. They are filled with doors, hallways, elevators, liminal structures designed for transition. Perhaps in such places, the walls between worlds grow thin. A room that exists in one dimension may not in another, and a traveler might slip unknowingly between them. Consider again Gabrielle's mother. If she awoke in her room after Gabrielle left, she may have found her daughter gone, her cries unheard. To her, it may have seemed as though Gabrielle had vanished. Could both women have been trapped in different versions of the same city, separated not by miles but by dimensions? If so, then the tragedy is doubled. Each lost the other, condemned to live out their lives haunted by absence. The horror of this possibility is magnified when we realize that such slips might not be limited to hotels. Reports exist of travelers boarding trains that never arrive, buses that vanish between stops, or even highways that seem to stretch endlessly before depositing drivers in places that should not exist. But the hotel room remains the most intimate of these mysteries because it strikes at the heart of safety. We lock our doors believing we are secure. The Vanishing Hotel Room mocks that belief, suggesting that walls and locks cannot protect us from reality itself shifting beneath our feet. Now let us turn to a modern example that has puzzled investigators. In 2003, a woman named Claire, traveling in Eastern Europe, claimed she had stayed in a small family, run-in. She remembered the floral wallpaper, the creaking staircase, the kindly old woman who served her soup. The next day, when she tried to return after sightseeing, she could not find the inn. The street looked the same, but the building was gone. Local shopkeepers told her no such inn had operated there in decades. Yet Claire still carried the room key in her pocket, a heavy brass piece with the number 6 engraved upon it. When she showed it to police, they laughed and told her it must be from another town. Claire swore it was real, and she still keeps the key as proof. Physical evidence like Claire's key is rare, but it offers a chilling thought. What if remnants of these vanished places sometimes linger in our reality? Could objects slip through even when entire rooms disappear? If so, then somewhere there may be countless forgotten items, receipts, keys, suitcases left as echoes of parallel realities brushing against our own. This leads us to the unsettling question: if rooms can vanish, can people? The stories suggest that they can. Gabrielle's mother, the salesman in New York, the couple in Tokyo all point to the possibility that individuals might slip into places where the rest of us cannot follow. Perhaps this explains the countless cases of missing persons across history. Not every disappearance can be blamed on crime, accident, or deliberate flight. Maybe, just maybe, some were swallowed by realities that exist just a breath away. But what does this mean for us? Should we fear our hotel rooms, our safe havens while traveling? Or should we take comfort in the thought that the world is richer, stranger, and more mysterious than we can imagine? The Vanishing Hotel Room mystery forces us to confront how little we truly know about the fabric of reality. Science tells us that time is not absolute, that dimensions may exist beyond our senses, and that space itself is not fixed but shifting. Perhaps these stories are not fiction, but fleeting glimpses of truths too vast to grasp. As we draw to a close, imagine once again standing in a hotel corridor late at night. The carpet muffles your steps. The air smells faintly of polish and dust. You hold a key in your hand, its brass cold against your palm. You approach your door, but when you insert the key, the lock does not turn. You glance at the number, confused, only to see that it is wrong. You step back. The hallway looks different. The lamps are not the same. And when you rush to the lobby, The staff frown politely and tell you that no such room exists, and that you must be mistaken. In that moment, you realize you are utterly alone, a traveler not only in a foreign land but perhaps in a foreign reality. The Vanishing Hotel Room mystery will never be fully solved. Perhaps it is a legend born of fear and memory. Perhaps it is a conspiracy, hiding crimes in the shadows. Or perhaps it is the greatest secret of all, that reality is not fixed, that the ground beneath our feet is less stable than we think, and that at any moment, a door we thought we knew might open into nothingness. And so, the next time you check into a hotel, pause for a moment, memorize the hallway, touch the door, notice the wallpaper, the lamps, the scent of the air, because when you return, it may all be gone. And if it is, will you trust your memory, or will you doubt yourself as the world tells you it never existed? That is the terror of the Vanishing Hotel Room, a terror that whispers across centuries, waiting for its next traveler.